Hello, my dear students. Welcome to the continuation of the lesson, The Diary of Anne Frank. Today, in this video lesson, we would be continuing from page number 176 till 178, okay? So let us begin. Monday, 3rd April 1944. Anne shared about her food condition. Their lunch consisted of brown beans and potatoes. The high point of the week was when they got a piece of sausage and jam with their bread. Anne was an optimistic girl. She said that whatever food she received was tasty as they were all alive. Now here, on 3rd April 1942, their condition in the annex, okay, the people living in the annex, their condition was getting worse. They were facing shortage of food, so that even for lunch now, okay, at this point, the only thing that was available for lunch was brown beans and potatoes. And the worst part during the week, okay, during that week was that they only got a piece of sausage, that is only one sausage with jam and bread, okay. Now, but Anne, even despite the condition, and she was a very optimistic girl. Optimistic means someone who expects good things from life, who sees positive things, okay. She was a very positive, optimistic girl, and she was to her, she was grateful that the food, no matter how bad the food was, she was still grateful, and the food it still tastes delicious to her, okay. It was still tasty because they were all alive. She was grateful that they were all alive. Wednesday, 5th April 1944. Anne mentioned that the end of war was far away. Her dreams and thoughts were full of Peter. But later, Anne realized that she must continue to do her schoolwork to become a journalist. That was she wanted. She knew it well that she could write, but not sure if she had a true talent or not. She never wanted a life like her mother or Mrs. Van Daan, whose works are forgotten. She was determined to write. Now here, on this day, that is 5th April 1944, and she writes in her diary, she mentions that the end of war was far away, okay, the war was never ending, and but despite of all these conditions they were in, her thoughts and her dreams were full of Peter, okay. But later Anne realized that she must concentrate on her studies because she wanted to become a journalist. Now Anne knew, she knew that she could write well, okay, she could write very well, but she was not sure whether it was her true talent or not. Now according to Anne, she never wanted to become like her mother and Mrs. Van Daan, whose works are forgotten. Now here, by this point, Anne, she means to say that, see, for example, the works that our mother used to do for us at home, they work from morning till night, right, tirelessly without even taking rest, so that the family goes well. So the work of our mothers, no matter how much their work always go unnoticed. We never used to record their works. So this is what Anne means, okay. She would never wanted to become like her mother and Mrs. Van Daan, whose works are all forgotten by the family members. But here she was determined to write. Tuesday, 11th April 1944. Their warehouse was being broken into that night around 9:30. Her father, Mr. Van Daan, and Peter went downstairs. So again, there was a burglary, okay, that night. So around 9:30, Anne's father, Mr. Van Daan, and Peter, they went downstairs to check if everything was all right. Finally, at 10 o'clock, the men came in. Three of them, okay, her father, Peter, and Mr. Van Daan, they came back to the room, and they were nervous and they were looking very pale. Now, burglars had broken into a warehouse, and Mr. Van Daan, on seeing them, yelled police, and the burglars fled. So what happened? When they went downstairs, they saw that the burglars were trying to steal. So that time, Mr. Van Daan, he screamed, okay, he started yelling, scream, police, police. Now that time, The burglars fled away from that scene. At 11, they heard footsteps on the staircase. The fear was indescribable. Anne had vision of all 8 of them being tracked away by the police that very night. There was more rattling at the bookcase. Then finally they heard the footsteps recede and they were out of danger. So see, now that we know that Anne and her family and the remaining members, they were hiding in the annex from the Germans, right? So whenever they hear any footsteps at night, okay, they become like they are really frightened when they hear the footsteps, because they never know when they'll be arrested and when they'll be sent to the concentration camp. So even that night when they heard the footsteps, they were afraid, really frightened, thinking that it might be the police who might come anytime and might track them away to the concentration camp. So but as time passed on, the footsteps finally receded, means the sound of the footsteps finally slowed down. Okay, they could no longer hear the footsteps and they were out of danger. The incident brought about a whole lot of changes. Peter would be patrolling the house between 8:30 and 9:30. Windows could be no longer opened. Toilets could no longer be flushed after 9:30 at night, and was waiting for the day when there would be people again, and not just Jews. So here, after the incident, okay, after the burglary, the there was a lot of changes in the annex. Okay, now what were the changes? It was Peter's duty, okay, to guard the annex, to guard the house from between 8:30 till 9:30, and the windows could no longer open the windows, nor toilet could no longer be flushed after 9:30 at night. Anne was really waiting for the day when they would all be considered as people and not as Jews. Friday, 28th April 1944. Anne said that she was sitting with Peter. Suddenly, the usual Anne slipped away and the second Anne took her place. The second Anne was never overconfident or amusing. Anne accepted that Peter erased a part of her that no one had ever erased before. But Anne was confused about Peter, as he was childish, had little willpower, courage, and strength. Now here, in this diary, Anne, she's talking about herself. Okay, here she is she is writing in a diary that there are 2 N in her. Okay, inside her there are 2 N. Now let us see who are those. Anne said that when she was sitting with Peter, suddenly the usual Anne, now the usual Anne, the talkative girl, okay, the usual Anne means the Anne that used to be, okay, every day, very talkative, very very pampered. So this Anne slowly vanishes, slowly goes away whenever she is with Peter, and the other Anne comes up. Okay, now the second Anne, okay, this is what I mean. Now the second Anne, what happens? She was never confident. Okay, this second Anne, she was nervous, she was shy, and she was never confident in front of Peter. Anne accepted that Peter reached a part of her that no one had ever reached before. So even Anne says that Peter, like, she is so close to Peter that Peter is the only person who could reach a part of her, okay, the part who could just fulfill the part of her which no one could fulfill. But at the same time, and she was confused, as Peter was very childish, he had less willpower, okay, and he had less courage and strength.